Napoleon's greatest comeback, the Battle of Marengo, is a story that's as thrilling as it is pivotal in the history of warfare. Imagine being on the brink of defeat, facing overwhelming odds, and yet somehow managing to turn the tide in your favor, reshaping the future of an entire continent. That's exactly what happened during the Battle of Marengo, a battle that would define Napoleon Bonaparte's destiny and leave a lasting mark on European history. But how did this momentous comeback happen? What were the key decisions, the brilliant tactics, and the incredible resilience that made it possible for Napoleon to emerge victorious against an enemy that seemed poised for success? This is not just a story of military genius. It's a story of hope, determination, and the relentless drive of a leader who refused to accept defeat. In 1800, Napoleon had returned to France after a failed Egyptian campaign, facing a country in turmoil and an army that had grown weary. His political enemies were numerous, and his prospects seemed bleak. But rather than surrendering to the circumstances, Napoleon saw this as an opportunity, a chance to reclaim his glory and solidify his power. In the north of Italy, Austrian forces were threatening to overrun French positions, and the situation seemed dire. The Battle of Marengo, fought on June 14, 1800, was Napoleon's answer to that threat. It was the defining moment that would elevate him from a fallen leader to the Emperor of France. As we dive into the details of this battle, you'll begin to see how the pieces fell into place through a series of brilliant moves, surprising twists, and strategic risks that would ultimately change the course of history. The French army was on the back foot. They were outnumbered, facing an Austrian force nearly double their size. The terrain in northern Italy was challenging, the weather conditions were unpredictable, and the French were at a disadvantage. For most of the day, it seemed like the Austrians would secure a decisive victory. Napoleon himself, known for his keen insight into battle tactics, was caught off guard by the speed and strength of the Austrian assault. It appeared that all hope was lost. But here's where the magic of Napoleon's leadership truly shone. Despite the dire situation, Napoleon didn't retreat or panic. He held his nerve and gave his soldiers the confidence they needed to keep fighting. At a critical moment, when the Austrian forces seemed to have broken through, Napoleon made a daring move. He sent in his reserve troops, fresh and eager to fight, under the command of his most trusted generals, including his right-hand man, General Louis Desaix. Dessaix's arrival on the battlefield was nothing short of a game-changer. With his reinforcements, the French forces suddenly found their footing. The Austrians, overconfident and scattered, struggled to reorganize in the face of this unexpected counterattack. Napoleon had done what seemed impossible. He had managed to transform what appeared to be a losing battle into a crushing victory. But it wasn't just about tactics, it was about leadership. Napoleon had the ability to inspire his troops like no other general. He knew that the morale of his soldiers was key to victory, and he made sure they understood the importance of the battle. The stakes were high, and the outcome of Marengo would determine not only his own future, but also the future of the French Revolution and the stability of the entire European balance of power. As the battle raged on, Napoleon's command over his forces grew more decisive. His willingness to take risks and his unwavering confidence in his military strategy ultimately paid off. The Austrians, exhausted and outmaneuvered, were forced to retreat, leaving behind a significant number of the casualties and prisoners. The victory at Marengo was total. Napoleon had achieved his comeback, not just as a leader, but as a force to be reckoned with on the global stage. This battle was more than just a military engagement. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of will and vision. The political ramifications were profound. With the victory at Marengo, Napoleon was able to solidify his position as the undisputed ruler of France. The Austrian Empire was forced to negotiate, leading to the Treaty of Luneville, which ensured French dominance over much of Italy and secured Napoleon's power in France for the years to come. But beyond the immediate tactical success, the Battle of Marengo represented something much greater. It was a defining moment in Napoleon's rise to power, a reminder that, even in the face of near-certain defeat, there is always the possibility of a comeback. His ability to read the battlefield, his willingness to take bold risks, and his unwavering belief in his troops turned what could have been a devastating loss into a resounding victory. The Battle of Marengo also had long-lasting effects on European history. Napoleon's victory marked the beginning of a new phase in the Napoleonic Wars, one that would see him expand his empire across Europe, reshaping the political and military landscape. His success at Marengo was a key moment in the creation of his legacy, one that would ultimately lead to his coronation as Emperor of the French just a few years later. So, how did Napoleon achieve his greatest comeback? It wasn't just about battlefield tactics. It was about vision, leadership, and an uncanny ability to turn the tide of history when everything seemed lost. The Battle of Marengo is a reminder that sometimes, even when the odds are stacked against you, there's always the possibility of a comeback. Napoleon proved that, against all odds, victory is often just one bold decision away. In this video, we'll take you through every step of this remarkable battle, from the early setbacks to the stunning turnaround, and examine how Napoleon's leadership and strategic brilliance played a pivotal role in securing one of his greatest victories. We'll break down the key moments, analyze the tactics used, and explore the lasting impact of this historic clash. If you've ever wondered how Napoleon managed to rise from the ashes of defeat, this video is for you. Join us as we dive deep into the Battle of Marengo and uncover the lessons that can be learned from one of the greatest comebacks in military history. You'll gain a new appreciation for Napoleon's genius and the critical moments that changed the course of the Napoleonic Wars forever. Stay tuned until the end, because what you'll learn from this battle will not only alter your perception of Napoleon, but also reshape how you view leadership, strategy, and the art of war. So, grab a seat, watch closely, and get ready to witness how one of the greatest generals in history turned defeat into triumph in the Battle of Marengo. June 13, 1800, Napoleon Bonaparte, first consul of France, has just executed one of the most audacious military maneuvers in history. His army, having crossed the perilous ice-clad Alps, has now arrived at the rear of the Austrian forces in Italy. Having seized Milan and obliterated every enemy force that stood in his path, things seem to be unfolding exactly as Napoleon had planned. In a calculated move, Napoleon spreads his forces across a wide cordon, ensuring there is no escape for General Melis's Austrian army. General Chebron and his 3,400 men take position along the River Po to hold the line. General Lepoip, commanding 3,500 soldiers, is sent to reinforce them, while General Desaix, leading 5,000 men, moves south to block the road to Genoa. This leaves Napoleon with only 22,000 troops, advancing westward toward the plains of Scrivia. But unbeknownst to him, the situation is far more perilous than he realizes. Misled by overly optimistic reports from scouts and spies, Napoleon has failed to see that Melis is not retreating. Rather, he has consolidated 30,000 battle-hardened Austrian troops around the fortress city of Alessandria, poised and ready to strike. These Austrian forces are well-rested, well-supplied, and possess a commanding advantage in both cavalry and artillery. They are preparing for an assault that will catch Napoleon completely off guard. On June 13th, General Victor and his 2 divisions, as part of the French advance on Alessandria, drive a small Austrian rearguard from the village of Marengo towards a fortified bridgehead on the Bormida River. But when the French reach the crossing, they find it heavily defended. Exhausted, drenched from the rain, and with darkness rapidly descending, they halt their pursuit. Weeks earlier, Napoleon had predicted that the decisive battle of the campaign would take place right here on the plains east of Alessandria. However, now he is convinced that Melis will avoid engaging in battle. But little does he know, just beyond the Bormida River, 30,000 Austrian soldiers are preparing for a full-scale assault. The French cannot see this imminent threat, as they failed to light any campfires, and the Austrians are hiding in the shadows. Dawn, June 14th. Napoleon's forces are scattered across 8 miles of open country, dotted with vineyards and farmland. General Victor's 2 divisions are the farthest west, holding Marengo and the main road. Behind him, General Lannes and several cavalry regiments are positioned. Napoleon himself, along with the Consular Guard and Monier's division, is stationed further to the rear. Meanwhile, Melas's forces are concentrated to the west of the Bormida River, behind a strong Austrian bridgehead. His chief of staff, General Anton von Zach, has devised a 2-pronged attack. General Ott's division will cross the river and move north toward Castel Ceriolo, while Melas, leading the bulk of his army, will strike directly up the main road toward the French. At precisely 8 a.m., the Austrian forces initiate their advance. French outposts are quickly driven back. At Pedrabona Farm, General Gardan's division comes under intense bombardment, forcing them to fall back and join the rest of General Victor's forces, who are now forming a defensive line behind the Fontaine stream. This narrow, steep-sided waterway, swollen by recent rains, stretches the length of the battlefield. The only easy crossing is a small wooden bridge along the main road. On the opposite bank, Victor's forces are sheltered by thick trees and sturdy farmhouses. As the Austrians approach the Fontaine, they are greeted by a deadly hail of musket fire from the French. The advancing Austrians suffer heavy casualties as they struggle to cross the swollen stream. General Hadik, leading a charge, is mortally wounded, and after several failed attempts to breach the French position, the Austrians are forced to fall back with significant losses. Around 11 a.m., north of Victor's position, General Bellegarde's brigade crosses the Fontaine, attempting to flank the French. However, General Lannes's division takes up a defensive position on Victor's flank, effectively countering the Austrian threat and preventing a breakthrough. As the Austrian forces press on, General Lannes and his division manage to drive off General Bellegarde's troops and re-establish their defensive position along the Fontaine stream. The heat of a humid summer day intensifies the struggle as Austrian attacks continue to pour in, with fighting raging fiercely along the stream. To make matters worse, more Austrian artillery is dragged into position and begins bombarding the French line relentlessly. Despite the growing intensity of the Austrian assault, General Zach's failure to anticipate the battlefield's bottlenecks, narrow crossing points and marshy terrain, has cost the Austrians valuable time. But by noon, the Austrians have managed to position 30,000 men and 92 artillery pieces, facing only 16,000 French troops and 16 cannons. The odds are rapidly stacking up against the French. Desperate for reinforcements, the French forces hold on as best as they can, but the Austrians are now pressing their advantage. Napoleon, still nowhere to be seen, has not yet arrived with the promised support. The French right, in particular, faces the greatest danger, where General Ott's division has captured Castel Ceriolo with minimal resistance and now threatens to outflank Lannes's position. Meanwhile, the Austrians spot a gap in the French center and rush 3 battalions across the Fontaine stream. At the same time, 1,500 Austrian dragoons attempt to flank the French left, but are charged and driven off by General Kellerman's heavy cavalry. Despite this, the Austrians succeed in capturing La Stortigliona farm, threatening Victor's left flank. An Austrian cavalry charge over the Marengo bridge is also repelled by Kellerman's forces, but the overall situation remains dire. As the French forces continue to face mounting pressure, some units run dangerously low on ammunition, while others have just a handful of cannons left. The French line is beginning to falter under the weight of the Austrian onslaught. Encircled and facing overwhelming odds, General Victor's divisions begin to give way, losing 400 men captured in Marengo, while another 300 are left behind at Casabianca, where they hold out for several hours. Covered by the 96th Demi Brigade and Kellerman's cavalry, Victor's division begins a difficult retreat, moving half a mile to the safety of Spinetta and the surrounding vineyards. The Austrians continue to pour across the Fontenone, pushing the French forces back further. As the Austrian pressure mounts, General Lannes is forced to pull back as well to maintain the line, leaving the once proud French defense in shambles. The French heroes of Montebello are on the brink of collapse. At the moment the Austrian attack begins, Napoleon is still 7 miles away, stationed at his headquarters in Torre Garofoli. Though he can hear the distant thunder of cannon fire, he fails to grasp the gravity of the situation and remains focused on cutting off the Austrian retreat. It isn't until 11 a.m. that the reports arrive, detailing the full extent of the crisis. Realizing the urgency of the moment, Napoleon writes an order to General Desaix, who has been sent to block the Austrian retreat and is now just 4 miles away. I had thought to attack the enemy. They have attacked me. Come, in the name of God, if you still can. The same order is sent to General La Poype, and Napoleon rushes to the front, bringing with him his only reserves, Monier's division and the Consular Guard. By 3 p.m., Lannes and Victor's forces have been pushed nearly a mile back, with Austrian cavalry shadowing their retreat. Forced to maintain tight formations to protect themselves from enemy cavalry, the French battalions endure a relentless barrage from Austrian artillery. Against all odds, the French troops are still holding their ground. Upon arriving at the front, Napoleon quickly assesses the situation. The greatest threat lies on the right, where General Ott's forces are about to turn the French flank. In response, Napoleon orders Monier's division to move to Castel Ceriolo to counter Ott's advance, forcing him to divert some of his troops. But there's still the formidable Austrian division led by General Schellenberg, numbering 4,000 men, to contend with. To counter this new threat, Napoleon commits his ultimate reserve, the elite Consular Guard, consisting of just 900 men. Despite being outnumbered, the Guard holds firm against the Austrian cavalry and engages in a brutal firefight with Austrian infantry. Their heroic resistance buys time for the rest of the French army to fall back, but the Guard is now isolated and on the verge of being overwhelmed. As Austrian dragoons strike the Guard's exposed flank and rear, the once unbreakable granite redoubt begins to crumble. The Guard, unable to hold the line any longer, is forced to retreat. Some of the soldiers surrender, while others are cut down in the chaos. By the end of the day, the Consular Guard has suffered more than 50% casualties, cementing their place in history as one of the most legendary units in military lore. With the retreat of the Guard, Napoleon is left with no more reinforcements. The French army is in full retreat, battered and broken, and slowly pulls back through the vineyards under constant bombardment from Austrian artillery. Casualties and stragglers leave just 6,000 men still holding the line. General Melas, now satisfied that the French forces have been defeated, hands over command to his chief of staff after sustaining injuries in a fall from his horse. The tide of battle has turned decisively in favor of the Austrians, but the final outcome of the battle is far from certain. After the battle, General Zach returns to Alessandria to draft a report boasting of his victory. But he has underestimated the resilience of the French and the unpredictable nature of war. Enter General Louis Desaix, a 31-year-old officer who is as brave as he is brilliant. Napoleon described their friendship as one his heart has for no other. That morning, Desaix was ordered to lead Boudet's 5,000-strong division across the Scrivia River to cut off the Austrian escape. However, the recent rains had raised the river's water level, delaying his crossing. When Desaix heard the distant sounds of battle to the north, he halted his march and sent a courier for updates. Napoleon's urgent order to return did not reach him until midday, at which point he immediately turned his division around and headed for the sound of the guns. Desaix arrived on the eastern edge of the battlefield at 5 p.m. to find the French army in full retreat. Napoleon, stationed at San Giuliano 5 miles east of Marengo, was surrounded by thousands of wounded soldiers, and the atmosphere was grim. But when word of Desaix's arrival spread, it lifted the spirits of the soldiers. Here they are, they cried, and Napoleon himself was reinvigorated. "We have retreated far enough today," he told his men. "You know that my custom is always to sleep on the field of battle." The Austrian army was advancing on all fronts, but had become scattered and disorganized. General Zach, who had taken the lead in the pursuit, handed over overall command to General Keim. Several other Austrian generals had been wounded, further disrupting their command structure. Napoleon, now with Desailly's fresh troops at his disposal, prepared for a final, desperate counterattack. General Marmont concentrated 18 cannons, which would unleash a devastating barrage against the Austrian forces. Then, leading with the 9th Light Demi-Brigade, the French launched their assault. The rapid, relentless fire from the experienced skirmishers of the 9th Light stunned the Austrians, forcing them to retreat. Zach, believing the French were retreating again, ordered more artillery and sent his elite grenadiers forward. But as the 9th Light fell back, a surprise came. Desailly's fresh division emerged from the vineyards, hitting the Austrians from the flank. Desailly himself joined the 9th Light and led them forward in a bayonet charge. It was then that he was struck through the heart and killed instantly. Upon seeing their commander fall, the soldiers of the 9th Light cried, "Vengeance!" and surged forward. General Kellerman, with 400 heavy cavalry, crashed into the Austrian left flank, adding to the chaos. An Austrian ammunition wagon was hit, detonating in a massive explosion that sent shockwaves through the enemy ranks. The impact was devastating, spread through the Austrian lines, and morale collapsed. In just minutes, hundreds of Austrians surrendered, and thousands more fled, spreading terror among the troops in the rear. General Zach, trapped in the rout, was among the 2,000 Austrian prisoners. The tide of the battle had turned completely. Thousands of French soldiers, who had been retreating just moments earlier, now stopped and joined the counterattack. As the Austrian center collapsed, General Ott's division was exposed, and his men quickly joined the rest of the army in their desperate flight. Later that evening, General Murat launched a final cavalry charge, sealing the victory and driving the Austrians back to their bridgehead. The Battle of Marengo had turned from a certain French defeat into one of the greatest comebacks in Napoleonic history. By nightfall, the French were fully victorious. But the cost had been high. The French lost a quarter of their army, while the Austrians suffered more than a third of their forces. Though Napoleon had contributed little directly to the victory, it was the skill of his officers, the steadfastness of his troops, and most crucially, Desailly's timely arrival that had saved the day. Napoleon, however, could not fully celebrate. Upon learning of Desailly's death, he told his secretary, "Yes, Bourrienne, I am satisfied. But Desailly, what a triumph this would have been if I could have embraced him tonight on the field of battle." Instead, Napoleon dined alone, reportedly on a hastily prepared dish of local ingredients that would later become known as chicken Marengo. Meanwhile, General Melas, shaken by his unexpected defeat, was uncertain of how to proceed. Some of his officers urged him to continue fighting, while others advised retreat. The French forces were closing in from all directions. In a final attempt to buy time, Melas proposed a ceasefire to allow for the burial of the dead. Napoleon refused unless Melas was also willing to discuss terms for the Austrian evacuation of northern Italy. With little bargaining power left, Melas reluctantly agreed. Over the following days, Melas and Berthier negotiated a comprehensive armistice. In exchange for safe passage back to Austria, Melas agreed to evacuate Piedmont, Genoa, and Lombardy, effectively ceding control of northern Italy back to France. Napoleon's victory solidified his position as the new head of state, and the remarkable nature of the comeback convinced him that his destiny was intertwined with the gods of war and fortune. That winter, General Moreau inflicted another crushing defeat on the Austrians at the Battle of Hohenlinden, and with Austria now defeated in both Italy and Germany, they were forced to sue for peace. The subsequent Treaty of Luneville saw the French frontier expand to the River Rhine, securing France's position in Europe. In Italy, France's client republics are officially recognized by Austria, and the following year, France annexes Piedmont. With this move, France has grown larger and stronger than it has been in 1,000 years since the reign of Charlemagne. But despite these triumphs, there remains just one formidable enemy, Great Britain. In 1801, British victories at Alexandria and Copenhagen make it clear that France cannot challenge Britain on the seas, nor abroad. With her continental allies defeated and Russia now threatening war, Britain sees no way of forming another coalition to challenge France on land. Both sides, exhausted by years of conflict, eventually reach a conclusion. After months of tense negotiations, peace is declared for the first time in Europe in a decade. But how long this peace will last remains uncertain. Now, imagine yourself stepping into Napoleon's boots at Marengo. Could you replicate his glory, perhaps securing a more decisive victory for France, or even turning the tide in favor of the Allies? With Wargame Design Studios' campaign Marengo, you have the chance to test your skills as a Napoleonic commander in this famous battle. Campaign Marengo is a hex-based wargame where you take command of either the French or Austrian forces. With its unparalleled historical accuracy and in-depth recreation of Napoleonic tactics, the game offers an immersive and challenging experience. You'll command infantry, cavalry, artillery, and specialized units, setting their formations and maneuvering them to outsmart your opponent and rout the enemy. In Campaign Marengo, you can play against the computer or challenge other players. The game includes not only the Battle of Marengo, but also the preceding battles that led to it, as well as Napoleon's 1796 campaign in northern Italy. With 24 unique battlefields and a wide variety of scenarios to explore, you're guaranteed hours of varied gameplay. Head to wargames.com/pages/epic-history to buy Campaign Marengo for just $29.97, 25% off for Epic History viewers when you use the discount code available on the landing page. Your purchase includes the full game, detailed orders of battle, extensive documentation, and a scenario editor that lets you create your own battles. But Campaign Marengo isn't the only offering from Wargame Design Studio. Their vast catalog of strategy games covers over a dozen Napoleonic campaigns, plus a wide range of other conflicts, from musket and pike battles to naval and aerial combat of the 20th century. Don't miss your chance to walk in Napoleon's footsteps on the Marengo plain with this special offer for Epic History viewers. We'll see you on the battlefield. Big thanks to Osprey Publishing for granting permission to use several of their images in this video. Be sure to check out the great Osprey titles on this topic, as well as other historical campaigns in the video description. And of course, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters who make this channel possible. From builders like Charlie, Dan Wilder, and Samuel Lamar Jackson, to citizens like Clemens, Tyler Hammond, and Henry Olives, and heroes like Philip Vladimir Klochin. Join them on Patreon to get early, ad-free access to new videos and more. And of course, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters who make this channel possible. From builders like Charlie, Dan Wilder, and Samuel Lamar Jackson, to citizens like Clemens, Tyler Hammond, and Henry Olives, and heroes like Philip Vladimir Klochin. Join them on Patreon to get early, ad-free access to new videos and more. Your support helps us keep creating high-quality historical content and telling the stories that need to be heard. By becoming a patron, you're not only helping to fund the research and production of these videos, but you're also part of a community that shares a passion for history. As a patron, you'll get exclusive behind-the-scenes content, early access to scripts, and the chance to vote on upcoming topics. Plus, you'll be joining a global network of history enthusiasts who love discussing these incredible events. If you're interested in deepening your knowledge of history, or just want to support the channel, head over to our Patreon and join us in bringing these epic stories to life. Once again, thank you to everyone who supports us, and a special thanks to our newest patrons. Your contributions are truly appreciated, and we're excited to share even more great content with you all. And now, back to the story. And so as we look back on the Battle of Marengo and the lasting impact it had on European history, we are reminded of how moments of defeat can sometimes give rise to the greatest victories. Napoleon's persistence, the bravery of his soldiers, and the unexpected turn of events show just how unpredictable history can be. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most iconic moments of the Napoleonic era, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more stories like these to life and ensures you won't miss out on our next adventure into history. And if you have thoughts on this battle or any other historical topic, share them with us in the comments below. We love hearing from you. Thank you for watching,